Greetings to all of you, members of the 4th Estate. Today marks the second day of our 55th National Conference. We began this day with a business breakfast addressed by Comrade Enoch Godongwani in his capacity as the Minister of Finance. We must thank all of you who made it to the breakfast, covered it, and gave the good story of the ANC to the nation, especially what we are doing in our own government. So, we began conference on the 15th of December with the arrival and registration of delegates, observers, and guests. Yesterday, the President of the African National Congress, President Cyril Ramaphosa, delivered the political report. We've worked with our content and messaging team to package that and will be sending to yourselves the short messages coming out of the speech, just for your own, coming out of the political report, for your own reference and reading whenever you may want to. We did it in this way so that it's easy to pick up the issues for your own articles, features, opinion pieces. So this is the work that is being done by the content and messaging team. So we'll share that across our digital platforms. We'll also share that even on our own web pages. I know that the digital media team is also working on developing small TikTok videos of the speech that those of you that are in the podcast space can also disseminate and use that. So this is part of the support we spoke about that we are going to be giving to the media, but also allow everyone else, young and old, to be able to interact with our conference, regardless of where they could be. So that's what we are going to be doing. So when we concluded the session 2 of the conference, we had said that when we start today with session 3, it will be a closed session. Now we are now in the closed session of conference. I saw some of the media reports suggesting that conference has not yet started. I'm going to appeal that we correct that line, because conference has started, conference is in session. The Deputy President is on the podium, he is delivering the organizational report. After the organizational report, they will deal and attend to clarifications and adoption of that report. Of course, I will come back to the adoption of the organizational report, and afterwards we'll go to the financial report. All reports that have to be presented under session 3, which is a closed session, and under session 4, which is a closed session, will be presented. The only aspect really that we are making finality on, with all the good progress that we've made, is credentials. Why are credentials critical? Credentials are meant to assist the organization qualify those who must participate in the deliberations necessary to facilitate resolutions, consensus, and decisions. So we have to qualify those who are part of those sessions. There must be members from branches, there must be accredited guests who bring skill sets that might assist the organization. In most instances, those that are accredited as guests allowed to come into closed sessions of conference do not have speaking rights in those. Because while we don't do it through a ballot, we vote through consensus. So it means that it is only voting delegates that participate on deliberations around the organizational report. A part of that requires that they are duly qualified. Qualified means duly accredited, is the adoption of such reports. Because resolutions of the ANC, reports of the African National Congress become legal documents. We have seen political parties, we have seen commissions, even the Commission on State Capture relied on some of the reports that came out of our own meetings. So we can no longer take our reports lightly, not that we did previously. But we've got to now know, pay special attention, understand that these reports take a legal standing as well. I have seen media statements that were circulated being attached as addendums to legal challenges, either to conferences or any other. Most of every time when comrades go to a court applying for agency, part of the things that they use as the merits to argue their case would be even statements that we made. I'm sure if you go to court documents, you will find my name in there, buried in some statements that they were using to motivate them. So that's why credentials are that critical. Now, we have introduced a new membership system. It is for the first time at this 55th National Conference that we are convening a national elective conference using this new agile membership system. It has got a number of security features necessary to avoid, identify and isolate any form of infiltration. The new membership system allows us to ensure that the rightful members are the ones that are accredited to participate in conference. For you to participate and vote for leaders in a conference of the ANC, you must be a member of that organization. Not just a member, you must be a member in good standing. The membership of the ANC has got categories. If you are a new member, you have got what is called window period. To manage possibilities or instances of rush ambitions, we place you on window period. So you don't just arrive today and then tomorrow you're already leading your branch. You have to arrive, show that you have been recruited by someone in the branch, have signed all of those, be placed on a window period, then qualify. Then you are now a member in good standing. You enjoy the full rights of the members as outlined in Rule 2 of the ANC Constitution. But because the membership of the ANC is annualized, if you have only paid 20 rand of the membership fee, it then means that at the next anniversary, you will be given 3 months probation at which you must renew your membership. Again, it's another window period, that's 3. So actually the first one is probation period. Like at work, man. You in a media house just began, you are subjected to probation for 3 months. even here in the ANC, because we're such a self-respecting organization, we've got probations as well. Members subject themselves to probation. The Constitution imposes probation on them for a period not exceeding 3 months. Then when your membership lapses, you then go on a window period, again of a defined period. If within that window period you have not renewed your membership, you cease to be a member. So it is some of those conditions that when you conclude on who is the rightful delegate here in the conference, you have to look at. So the system has got a number of features that can do early detections on such. So it's good for us because it says by the time you sit conference, every one of the near 4,500 delegates who shall have participated in the election of the leadership of the African National Congress, the adoption of the organizational report, the financial report, and the adoption of the resolutions, the constitutional amendments that must guide the organization at least for the next 5 years, was duly accredited, qualified to be in that meeting, met all the criterion set out by the African National Congress. So it is that which we have to unfortunately be thorough on. Time-wise, will we be able to conclude the business of conference? Yes, indeed we will. We will. The good thing about the work we are doing now in this national conference is that unlike provincial conferences, the national conference, before it sits, convenes 2 critical gatherings. So the NC has got a number of structures. What are these structures of the ANC? The apex structure of the ANC is the national conference. So the next structure that just comes after the national conference is the National Executive Committee. The National Executive Committee of the ANC is empowered by the Constitution of the African National Congress to take decisions in between conferences. The other critical structure is the National Working Committee. It processes the day-to-day running of organization. It effectively deals with the business of the ANC overall and reports to the National Executive Committee. So decisions of the National Working Committee are to be considered by the NEC. And once affirmed, they are implemented. This includes guidelines. The NEC can't amend the Constitution. That falls within the province of the National Congress of the ANC. The other critical structure is the National General Council. Owing to COVID conditions, we did not convene the National General Council of the ANC coming into this national conference. What we did was that through the policy subcommittee of the ANC, led by Comrade Jeff Radebe, and the political subcommittee of the ANC, led by Comrade Natim Tetwa, we distributed NGC documents. The essence of these NGC documents was that they were then to guide what will come out of what will become of policy documents going into the National Policy Conference. So the other structure of the ANC is the National Policy Conference. All these structures of the ANC have got defined powers. The NGC has got defined powers. The National Policy Conference has got defined powers specifically to consider and recommend policy discussions to the National Conference. As we see to the National Conference, we have already gone through the Policy Conference. Why is this critical to this conference? It is critical to this conference because you are not going to have exhaustive discussions of all those policy documents, because you have now done your recommendations. If those recommendations are consistent and similar with what you took out of the policy conference, it means all you are going to do is affirmation. This is important because it now deals with the time. It now tells you that it means that there is no expectation on our part that larger amount of time will be spent in commissions dealing with this policy discussion documents, because they are now refined, presented in a way and form that they must constitute decisions. So yes, we will be able to conclude the business of conference. The reason why this conference is called a national elective conference is because part of the critical things that it must do is that it must elect the leadership of the ANC. But already you had a policy forum in the form of the policy conference that dealt with all your policies. Those of you who were here in July sat with us here. I mean, at one stage we had a 6-hour press briefing just dealing with policy discussion documents. So critical to this conference is the election of the leadership that must be able to lead the organization for the next 5 years. So we are doing everything possible within our power, working around the clock, to make sure that the conference is proceeding as planned. So there is nothing that suggests that conference will not proceed as planned. Actually, it's all hands on deck. We had, when we spoke yesterday, we also again spoke about the notion of media open sessions, what I previously referred to as open days. Some of you in the media have come forward to say that the limitations imposed by yourselves not being able to interact with delegates makes you run dry, especially your print and digital media platforms. And that you may want space opened or considered for you to go and interact with delegates even to pick up questions and all of that. It's not a bad suggestion. It's not a bad suggestion. Unfortunately, the program has already been adopted. And the national spokesperson of the ANC has got no power, none whatsoever, to change the program of conference. Everything that we call open with yourselves must also be open here on the program. Yesterday, when you went in, spent 3 hours on the ground, that was part of the open session that we had committed to making available to yourselves. So those open sessions are there, but they are as inserted in the program. We will meet with the media relations team after this briefing to put forward a motivation to the conference steering committee to consider allowing yourselves that space to at least be taken out of the media village and interact, or bring delegates this side, interact with delegates within a defined space. We'll put forward that proposal. It's not a decision we can just take by ourselves without having to test it with the relevant bodies that are empowered to run with the life of a conference. So we are hoping that today we'll deal with all reports and we'll also deal with the nomination of officials and possibly the voting of officials later on. Our delegates just have to understand that we may have to work for much longer than we had anticipated, so that we can still meet the timelines we have set out to do this conference. Otherwise, it's not just all systems go. The systems are in motion. Everything is running as planned. If members of the media have got clarity-seeking questions that they may want us to deal with, so really this briefing was just about giving you status update of where we are, so that you are able to diarize, plan, and all of that. We have made those in the leadership structures of the ANC available to talk to yourselves. They've been coming in to come and clarify. And we must thank these provincial chairpersons to have dealt with the question of conduct. I was listening to the chairperson of KwaZulu-Natal, Comrade Siboni Soduma, conveying a very responsible message on the conduct of delegates overall. We have called on all our chairs, our regional secretaries, to go out there to their delegates and consolidate one single message, that the collapse of this conference will be an indictment on the leadership overall, not just on the National Executive Committee, on all of the 9 provinces and the 52 regions, on all of the near 4,500 delegates that are in this conference. We've got a moral and political duty to make sure that this conference succeeds. The message conveyed by our president in his political report on the unity of the African National Congress, on the renewal of our organization, is one that we must all uphold, advance, and sustain. It's very important. So if there are questions that you may want to be clarified on, we are here to attend to those. Let's take all of the questions. If there is only one hand, we'll just conclude that there's only one question coming. Yeah. Just say your name, your media house, and then go on to ask. Thanks. No, you can ask. We can hear the voice.
My name is Inayat Wadi. I'm from Salam Media. Just with regards to the interaction with the media and the delegates that are present at the conference, this is absolutely important for us as media to be able to interact, and this is for the success of the media being present at the national conference. And the point I'd like to also raise is, we know we are independent media as Salam Media, and I'm sure that there are many small media houses that are here as well. And also one needs to consider the presence of the smaller media houses and not only give preference to the major players in the media space. Thank you.
Mkhokheli Bandla, SABC Radio. If I can take you back to yesterday, Pule, we did note that when former President Jacob Zuma arrived late at the conference, that almost disrupted the conference. And when he arrived, he sat amongst the delegates and not with the leadership. Did that send any kind of a message, or what did it mean to the ANC and the conference in general? Thank you.
What was the name of the meeting?
Mkhokheli, SABC Radio.
Claudia Broll, German newspaper. I'm interested, has there been any indicators or warnings that there will be increased attempts of infiltration that made a new system of checkups necessary? And has there been attempts of infiltration in the past?
Which media house?
German newspaper, FAZ from Frankfurt.
Okay. German?
Newspaper, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, it's FAZ.
Sure, South African journalists, we are picking up. Okay. There's interest being taken on our conference. We appreciate that. By a German newspaper. Yes.
Njanji Chauke from Newsroom Africa. I just wanted to check, obviously yesterday when the leader of the party, the president was speaking, there were dissenting voices, you know, I mean, I think for I wouldn't say the most part of his speech, but the first 20 minutes, there was a lot of disruption. How as a party are you going to handle that going forward? Obviously you are saying, as a party, you've got a moral and political responsibility that this conference succeeds. What is being done to ensure that there is no disruption as we proceed with conference? Thanks.
Okay.
Velane Lutiti from Telemaverick. I want to ask if was a separate request made to ESCOM for an exemption from load shedding? Telemaverick.
Okay. What?
A request made to ESCOM for exemption from load shedding.
Okay, my name is Sintewa, I'm with the SABC. We are told that there were some delegates who are still registering. Any chance we have the specific number of those who are still registering? And of course, how many delegates have been accredited and attending this conference? At some point, there was a number that has been thrown around, it's 4,500, but do we have the exact number? And the exact number of those who are still outstanding in terms of registration? Thanks.
Okay, is there's Tshegofatso from Tex FM? Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Mabi. Yes, I am Tshegofatso Makola from Tax FM. So yesterday we saw a few party members and even members of the NEC gathered outside of the Nasrec Expo Center, expressing their views against some of the candidates, that are within the NEC, but specifically in the top 6. So my question to you will be, will such NEC members be held accountable by the ANC?
What did they do, Tshegofatso?
So they were outside expressing their views and issues with some top 6 members outside of the Nasrec Expo Center. Outside as in on the tar road, at the garage? Yes, outside. Yes.
Kantle.
Yes, Kantle. Okay. They were outside.
Okay. I hope this is the last hand.
I'm Piet Kroukamp from the Vrye Weekblad. Since the conference is running behind schedule, do you foresee that you will end on the envisaged time or the program time, or do you think it might run into another day?
Where do you come from?
Piet Kroukamp from the Vrye Weekblad.
Big?
Piet Kroukamp. Yeah.
Big three.
Yeah, I'm one of the handlangers of Max de Pre.
Big trip.
Piet Kroukamp. Kroukamp, C-R-O-U-C.
Okay. You're on the list. One of the media houses were accredited. Okay. Can we just make sure that when we let's just raise our hands at once, because we start with 2 hands. As people are asking, before you know it, you have got 1 million hands.
Thank you. Erin Bates from Newsroom Africa. Just to find out, in terms of the registrations not being complete and moving forward with these addresses, are you concerned that aggrieved party members who are not in those sessions might have grounds for a legal challenge because they've not yet been brought into the room? Does it undermine the progress and the legitimacy of the addresses, like the political address and so on? Thank you.
News 24.
Newsroom Africa, Channel 405.
Okay. Let's start with the last question by Newsroom Africa. Concerned that aggrieved members who are not yet accredited might want to approach the courts to question the legitimacy of conference. Well, just to say that those that have not been accredited and are still at the accreditation point are not aggrieved. No, they've just not been, they are just waiting their turn to be registered. There is no decision that will be taken by this conference without credentials being adopted. We have to qualify everyone. By the time we take decisions in this meeting, they too will be present and they will have a share of expressing their own opinion if they so wish. So on that score, everything is really up to scratch. I think one of the media outlets that we accredited had a question around whether we'll be able to still meet the time that we have set out. We will. We will indeed meet the time frame that we have set out for this conference. So we will finish on the 20th as planned. We'll do it once, you will see, once we are done with, because when we're done with reports, credentials are now going to be playing a very small role and contributing towards the adoption of those reports. So at least we did not say, you see, what caused delays in Gauteng and where we ultimately had to reconvene the second leg of conference was that when the cadres were dealing with credentials, and we learned from that experience. I like saying experience helps us here. It's the best teacher. Because in Gauteng, what we didn't do is that as we were dealing with credentials, we literally stopped conference adjourned for a day or two. And by the time they came back, you no longer had the time. As you concluded the business of conference, you had only elected officials. So we are doing this having learned from that experience. I mean, in the province of the Eastern Cape, because conference ran till late on Sunday, and delegates needed to leave because they were going to work that coming Monday. I could still, recall that because I had to stay in there with the provincial secretary, Comrade Luke Aitobi, to come and brief, to come and announce results of additionals. Northwest, similar instance. We could only conclude with the election of the officials in the first, so it had two legs as well. Could not conclude with the whole conference. And because we had two legs, DIP had to even take over the running of communications for the Northwest province. And on top of that, there was there was again litigation, legal cases being brought by those that might not have been happy with the outcomes. And that took our time as well, so we had to pay attention on those. I think the conference would have been reconvened in a week or two to conclude with the election of additionals. So in 2008, when we were, now not in the ANC, in the ANC Youth League, the 23rd National Conference of the Youth League, did not conclude its business. It elected only the officials. The president of the Youth League, the deputy president of the Youth League, the Secretary General of the Youth League, the Deputy Secretary General, and the Treasurer General. These officials of the Youth League were then tasked with the work of organizing the next leg of their national conference to conclude the business of the 23rd National Conference. And they did so. I think they reconvened 3 months afterwards. We are hoping that this, I was just sharing with you, just out of the question you asked, that the ANC has dealt with instances of this nature in the past, but we are confident that this conference will conclude its business by the time we reach Monday. We're confident about that. When members express themselves, their views outside meetings, even if they are in the leadership, they can't be taken to disciplinary hearing simply for speaking. I mean, the ANC, one of the things that, especially under the rights of members, one of the rights that members of the ANC enjoy is freedom of expression. And the articulation in the Constitution is that freedom of expression must be done in a manner and way that also promote the unity of the African National Congress, the diversity of views, plurality and all of that, enriches the work that we are doing as an organization. Those things are there in the Constitution on the rights of a member. Imagine what would happen, Sekhofatso, if everyone in the ANC who just spoke outside at Sasol Garage just get charged. What will happen? You know, we have to allow, political animals, it's in their very nature. They express themselves. They hold different views on issues. It's part of the dynamism that, are you saying that cadres of the ANC can't even express themselves and make their views known, even because we don't agree on all issues. Even we in the leadership don't agree on all issues. Even in meetings, the reason why we call meetings is the intention of calling meetings is to forge consensus. It's not because we don't, if we're all just agreeing, there was no need to even call a conference. Even in this conference, I'm sure that delegates sitting in this conference, while they agree on the same policy positions, but would have different preferences of leadership. Which now takes me to the question that Comrade Njanji asked about what we are going to do about what we saw yesterday. That's why we always say to our members, part of the do's and don'ts is that as you sing songs that foster some levels of sanity, don't come across as suggesting that there's a crisis and all of that. We allowed people to sing about different preferences and different wishes that they may have. We gave them the space to sing. And after singing, we allowed them to go and sit down. But when they started banging tables, that now fell into a different province. Because these tables don't belong to the ANC. They belong to Nasrec. So you will break tables and cause unnecessary expenses for the organization. Mara, when you are just singing, we allow you to sing. Once you are done singing, you sit down. So the president of the ANC, as people were singing, he was presenting his political report. The DIP team came in because in your majority, you are now, you see, yesterday, I'm sure you saw, we had to ask you to turn your cameras and face the president. Because it's human nature. When your cameras are watching delegates, even when they were not singing, they see your TV. Then they start singing the loudest now. Because the camera is there. But as soon as you turn to your cameras, even the voice subsided. So you see that cameras can also contribute to disruptions. We see cameras, then we start showing some courage. You know, because when you turn to your cameras, the noise levels also went down. It started to subside. We were there with yourselves. Because at one point, the president was addressing delegates, all cameras were watching that side. We're watching President Zuma and we're watching delegates. Now I'm sitting here, cameras are watching my direction. What do? There's a point I want to raise. Here is an opportunity to make my point known, heard by the world. I scream in front of that camera. And thanks that yourselves cooperated when we asked you to turn your cameras and face the podium. Thank you for that. We want to show that you too want to see this conference succeeding. I'm sure on who it elects, it's not your duty. That's the duty of delegates. The SABC, Ntebu asked about delegates that are still being registered and wants to know the number. When the registration is done, we are going to first give those numbers to the delegates. That is why those credentials are presented in a closed session. Imagine the spokesperson of the ANC comes and announces credentials here when delegates are still waiting for them. Delegates are waiting for credentials. Agri numbers are credentials. So many are voting, so many are non-voting, you know. So that's why when we went on the numbers yesterday, I was cautioned that no, but the people who need to get the numbers first are the delegates, because this is their conference. My retreat was to come back and give you percentages. It's sufficient, because I can also be charged to be transgressing on the communication protocols of the ANC. So we have to give the numbers first to the national conference. Once that is done, the briefing on the numbers will be done by the Treasurer General, representing the Secretary General's office. He will do that. The Daily Maverick says that we applied for load shedding exemption. We're a very responsible organization. It will never come right for the ANC to want to enjoy different rights from those of the rest of South Africa's people. It will be an indictment, actually, on our own performance of our leadership role. When we looked for facilities to hire, we also had to make sure that on an event of load shedding, they have got some alternative generation capacity to provide for us. We can't ask ESCOM to move outside its normal load shedding schedule to accommodate the ANC conference. When such a question is asked, then I ask myself that, are we trying to say to South Africans, go to the way there's a drive to get us out of power, are we trying to say to South Africans that in their conference, they even apply to be exempted, so that the people of Phalaborwa, of Sekukuneland, of Umlazi, of Guguletu, can know that their electricity problem means nothing to the ANC, because the ANC can just apply to be exempted? Hey, that question is quite loaded. Just coming from the Maverick, because the push to get us out of power is happening at different fronts. So you ask yourself, so the ANC can apply to be exempted on load shedding because it is sitting an important conference, and the people of Soweto can continue without electricity? Some of the questions we ask, why would the ANC want to be exempted when the people of Soweto don't have electricity? We are not different from them. Because when you ask us such questions, you also make us ask questions about you and your motives. The ANC will never ask anyone. It will be state capture of a special type. We ask ESCOM, exempt us because we have got a conference. That is state capture of a special type. Ordinary South Africans cannot be subjected to other things that the ANC is not being subjected to. When there is no electricity, we feel it at Lituli House. When there's no electricity, we at Lituli House also don't have electricity. It doesn't mean that when there is no electricity in Soweto, there's a special arrangement, because if there could be an exemption, just in fairness to you, if there could be an exemption to us here, it means that even at Lituli House there could be an exemption. You see, this is what gives rise. I was giving an example. I pointed to Daily Maverick because we are the ones who raised the question. We don't have any issue against the Daily Maverick, just to place that on record. But you raised the question. So at Lituli House, when people don't have electricity in Johannesburg, we too are affected. Those of you who have come to Lituli House for press briefings, you have seen. Sometimes when we do our press briefings, we have got to time them according to the load shedding schedule. To say, okay, wanted to do a press briefing at 12, we can't do it at 12. Let's do it at 10 o'clock because of load shedding. So, Ralokopa, don't ask us questions that makes us suspicious. Newsroom? Okay, we dealt with your question on disruptions. Well, we haven't as yet picked up instances of infiltration on our own system. But we're doing everything else to make sure that we attend to those. If there is anything that seeks to undermine our own systems, especially our IT security, we have got all the necessary firewalls to attend to that. So for now, it's just taking its own time because of the many other protocols that we have introduced. But so far, we haven't had such. Why was President Zuma sitting with delegates? Well, he's a branch delegate. He's a branch delegate. So branch delegates sit at spaces reserved for delegates from branches. So he's a branch delegate in this conference. If I was a branch delegate, I would be sitting with branch delegates. Of course, I'm in the National Executive Committee, but when he chose to sit with branch delegates because he's coming here representing a branch. And I'm sure you would have seen later on President Zuma and President Cyril Ramaphosa having that easy touch. So there's no big issue between leaders of the ANC that will stand against the organization continuing. I can tell you now, all these leaders of the ANC love the organization. All of them. And everything else that they do in the movement is to contribute towards the movement growing and going forward. They don't know any other life except that of the ANC. And that is encouraging. Well, we have noted the point made by Salam Media on also being given the space to interact. That issue was also brought to my attention. We're attending to it. I'm sure you have begun to see some movement. We've also been talking to ourselves as well. We support media diversity. That's why we have accredited all of you. That's why we have accredited a campus-based radio station, Radio Tex. So we would simply have said, no, Tsegofatso, your radio station is limited to students of the University of Pretoria. You won't be accredited, but we accredited them. When we do one-on-ones with the president of the ANC in the past, we even allowed, when we did in Limpopo, if I remember, we even allowed community radio stations to come in and talk to the president. We support media diversity. We support media diversity. It was this government of the ANC that led the process of establishing the Media Diversity and Development Agency, the MDDA, to promote the creation of community radio stations, to support initiatives such as the National Community Radio Forum. It was us. That is why when bodies such as the South African National Editors Forum invite us to meetings, we always oblige.
Well, let's come out of that press briefing led by national spokesperson of the African National Congress as he brings us up to speed with where they are, reassuring us that the conference is indeed underway. And of course, he faces a lot of questions from the media, particularly about where they are now with the process of registering delegates. But let's cross now to our senior reporter, Criselda.